so much, everyone, for staying with us. Call it a day of declaration, and perhaps you may have captured it with the right words, because indeed it was declaration galore in the camp of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. Two former governors made their intentions known. One was in Abuja, the former governor of Edo State and the former chairman of the APC, Adams Oshiomhole, made public his ambition and gave reasons for his interest. And in Ikotepene, in Akwa Ibom State, the Minister of Nigeria Delta Affairs and former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Godswill Akpabio, attracted a large number of people where he declared his interest to chase the APC presidential ticket at the primaries. Also here in Abuja was the governor of Ekiti State, Fayemi, who gave an account of his ambition and why he's the right man for the job. Tonight, I'm being joined by that man who has been a two-term chairman of the Governors Forum, a former Minister of Mines and Steel. He was a journalist and operated an underground radio station during the military junta, a Radio Kudirat, a war studies scholar. Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Fayemi, joins me live here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Perhaps bring to a closure my frequent questions to you about your ambition. And each time I ask, you always tell me that I should wait. So from those time and now, what has changed? Was it consultation, or you just changed your mind, or somebody convinced you?
No, not really. I've always maintained to you, Sheon, that I had a job of work to do in Ekiti State, and that I would like to concentrate on that job. And in the course of those conversations that you and I were having, I was also having a range of consultations with other Nigerians. Some who approached me feeling that I should do this, others who were of a different mind. And I then decided that the best way to do this was to go around and talk to leaders of thought, political leaders, community leaders, traditional rulers, and the electoral body also came up with its timetable, which really made it impossible for me to procrastinate any further. So at that point, I decided that I should extend my consultation to Mr. President and to other party leaders before finally arriving at this decision that was made public today.
So you've consulted with the president?
I've had conversations with the president.
And you told him point blank that you would like to be the next president?
You know, for me, the president is a father figure to me. So I've had a range of conversations with the president. It's not necessarily the case that those conversations can be made public, but at all times we've discussed the transition and the role that he would expect people like me to play in the transition after his exit from office.
Have you always wanted to be Nigeria's president?
For me, running for office is not an ambition. I've always maintained that it's service, it's sacrifice, it's duty. This is what I've always done. And I trace the trajectory today from way back when I was a student union leader to my involvement in the pro-democracy movement. You just referred to Radio Kudera, to my work setting up institutions as a civil society leader, the Center for Democracy and Development, working as a community organizer, working as a political organizer, working towards the merger of APC and founding the Progressive Governors Forum alongside other governors who then felt I should be the founding coordinator of the Progressive Governors Forum.
So in your own time, that was when the Nigerian Governors Forum was founded?
No, the Progressive Governors Forum is different from the Nigerian Governors Forum. We formed the Progressive Governors Forum when the major parties came together. So the 11 governors of ACN, AMPP, CPC, and ABGA formed the progressive governors from a faction of ABGA, which Rochas Okorocha belonged to at the time. And I was the founding coordinator of the PGF. I handed over to Rochas Okorocha, and Rochas Okorocha handed over to Atiku Bagudu. That's the trajectory of what I'd done in the party. And then, of course, my colleagues felt, upon my return as governor of Ekiti, that I should be the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, which is the non-partisan body of all 36 governors. So if you look at this trajectory, it's not about ambition. It's about finding myself at positions and critical junctures that have positioned me in leadership. So you can't really say I've been out there looking for this position, looking for that position, but I have garnered experience. I've garnered a lot of knowledge in the course of these assignments and duties that I have been saddled with. That would be the way to answer your question. For me, it's not really an ambition. It's a duty, and it's a duty that must be done.
Tonight, our conversation will be more or less, I know you're a policy person, and you perhaps knows a lot about some of the tenets of democracy and some of the issues about governance. I mean, you've had intensive research work relating to all of these areas. So I'm more concerned tonight about those governance-related matters other than politics. But let me throw in one political question before we go into those areas. I know this question may have bothered your mind at some point, but how have you addressed it? You'll be running against someone who is perhaps, who has helped you politically, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. How does that come to you in the first instance?
Well, Sheung, this is a question that would naturally interest your viewers. Let me say that I have had a very, very good relationship with Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, whom I met in exile way back in '94 when he came out after the annulment of the election and the establishment of NADECO. He came out with other leaders, Professor Bolaji Akemi, General Akinri Ade, Air Commodore Dan Suleiman, Chief Antonio Nauro. They all came out, and I was critically placed at a point in which I could be of significant assistance to the leadership that came out into exile at the time, because I was a major figure in the diplomatic efforts of the opposition movement. That was the context of my meeting Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, and we've maintained a very cordial relationship ever since then. So when I was asked by Governor Nii Adebayo, the current Minister of Trade and Investment, to come and run for office in Ekiti, Asiwaju supported me. He was out there for me because of his knowledge of my involvement in the pro-democracy movement. And we've always been quite, we've worked together on a number of issues. So this is not a personal contest. This is about Nigeria and the future of our children. And it's about competing visions of what that future holds for Nigerians. I have the greatest respect for Asiwaju. I'll continue to do that. But I do believe that I have a strong vision for how to reposition Nigeria and build on the legacies of the current president. And I went into some detail about that today in my declaration speech.
Indeed, you made a lot. I mean, you gave details of some of those, which will be getting some clarification about some of those issues. But I mean, clarify for us, if you may, for those who are criticizing and say it's somewhat some kind of betrayal for someone who has helped you politically, and now for Asiwaju Tinubu, who says it's been his lifetime ambition to be Nigeria's president. How do you see it?
Sure, I know you like all these exciting.
No, is it me or about my viewers who are interested in knowing some of his ongoings?
The Ashweju that I know is a Democrat, and I'm not even sure that he would share your view. He believes that politics is a marketplace of ideas, and people should test their own convictions. His courage of conviction is not in doubt, but I do not think he would want to then stamp on the convictions of others in terms of how Nigeria should go. And it would be great for us to see things from the same point of view as Democrats. But if we don't, then it's useful to test those ideas and let Nigerians be the judge of the direction they want the country to go. I don't believe that we should see that as a basis for demonizing anyone. And I know that Ashweju that I know, that I have interacted with, would not subscribe to that. I don't believe that he would use terminologies like betrayal or whatever else you called it.
Those are what some of your members are talking about.
Well, this is not an inheritance. It's about Nigeria. Nigeria is the commonwealth of all Nigerians. It is not a traditional title that we're seeking. The office we're seeking is to make improvements in the lives of Nigerians.
Let's talk about that improvement. And first and foremost, I'd like to also place on record for a lot of people who may not remember that you were head of research and documentation for the APC in 2015, the campaigns.
Yes, I was. I was director for policy and research.
I remember that you provided a lot of information to some of us who were inquiring about, because the party had hardly gotten its act together in terms of shape and structure and the coloration of its ideas. But you were always on hand at the time to say, oh, this is the direction, this is how our party sees things. You were one of those who made popular, including the likes of former governor of Osun State, Governor Rauf Aregbesola, the welfareist tendencies, which one of those policies that place your party perhaps on the left side of the center as a welfareist party. In Nigeria of today, should he be president of Nigeria, how do you want to cope with the welfareist tendencies and the capacity of the nation in terms of the revenue that is available, giving the elderly stipends, also feeding school children? Is it affordable for the economy of this nation?
It's not about affordability alone. It's about creating wealth and about being ideologically committed to pulling the weak and the vulnerable from their position of need. I think as a party that is primarily a social democratic party, our vision in the APC has always been about improving the human condition. And if you must improve the human condition, it must be done holistically. Education, healthcare, social investments are the way to improve the human condition. When we introduced Owo Arugbo, Social Security for the elderly in Ekiti State, it wasn't because we had a deluge of millions of naira. It was because we felt that we needed to provide support to the indigent elderly in our state. And that was one of the motivations for what we eventually did when we put in our manifesto in the APC, the conditional cash transfer. And it was modeled after what is known as the Bolsa Familia. If you are aware of the Brazilian Social Security, the largest conditional cash transfer scheme all over the world is run by Brazil, and it started under President Lula. However, in order to be able to make that possible, those who are more fortunate in society also need to step up to the plate. That is where things have fundamentally gone awry in Nigeria. 6% taxation to GDP is one of the lowest in the world.
Would you be increasing that should you become president?
Well, I would ensure that those who ought to pay should meet their own responsibilities. They need to pay up what is due. The level of tax evasion in our country is scandalous.
Are you of the opinion, or do you hold the view that the rich should be taxed?
Absolutely.
To pay for the benefit of the poor?
I just said that the more fortunate in society should contribute to improving the lot of those who are less fortunate.
So if you become president, you will tax the rich more. And how more? How much is the more that you're talking about?
Sheung, one thing that is clear now is that the rich in Nigeria actually hardly pay any tax. The people who pay tax in Nigeria now are mostly those who are earning salaries, because these taxes are deducted from source. We haven't quite figured out in the most appropriate manner how to ensure that the leakages are plugged in the tax system. With the greatest respect to our FIRS, they're doing a lot to do that. They're introducing technology. There are informal taxations, and many of our state revenue boards are improving on that. But we can still do a lot more. That's what I'm saying.
So, in essence, you're one of those who have fought and spoken up about how much power the center has had and how much of devolution of those powers should go to the federating units. You are a pro-federating unit person. You believe that the state should have a level of independence for them to be able to run their affairs. What have you noticed that perhaps will spur you to a drastic change or restructuring, if you may use that word, in the manner in which the nation Nigeria is being run, such that the states and the local government are more effective? What exactly would that be for you?
Sean, the word I used in my declaration speech today was decentralization and devolution. And simply for me, that is an efficient way of bringing government closer to the people. There is nothing fundamentally wrong in having a federal government. But in a two-tier federation, you cannot have a tyranny of unfunded mandates. Those who have the responsibilities should also have the resources to prosecute those responsibilities. So if you say primary health is at the local level or state level, if you say primary education is at that level, then the resources should also devolve to that level. And greater accountability should accompany the resources that go to that level. That has been the position of the Nigerian Governors Forum. And I know that in the recent revenue allocation rejigging that has taken place, there's been some shift towards more revenue to the state and local government and less revenue to the federal. But I am not pushing for this to the detriment of revenue generation at the local level and increased productivity by Nigeria. We have to ensure that we earn the money before we start spending it. And wealth creation has been a challenge that we must tackle alongside wealth distribution.
Because I was asking the welfareist question earlier. Nigeria has perhaps one of the largest number of poor people on the globe. And the question is, how would you turn around that scenario?
Okay. How did China turn around 700 million people out of poverty in less than 2 decades?
How would Dr. Fayemi do is?
We would, and I said it today, focus on agriculture, but ensure that we have a much more transparent and effective agricultural financing system in place. 2, we use more technology in driving agriculture and ensure that the collaboration between outgrowers and commercial agricultural producers is strengthened. That's something that we have to do. The second is what we do with our micro and small and medium scale enterprises. We haven't been able to do as much as we should because they are really the engines of wealth creation.
How much of jobs can we possibly get out of this? Because if you look at the percentage of the unemployment rate in Nigeria, how much of that can you cut in 1 year or in 2 years? Let's assume, based on your plan.
Sean, when you look at, okay, take the Nigerian land mass. How much of our arable land is being cultivated? Less than 6%. So even if you start from that, you know that the capacity to improve on agriculture's contribution to GDP is immense. But there are other debilitating factors responsible for our inability to do that. Security being one of them, climate change being another, fertilizers, support to our farmers. And President Buhari has done quite a lot in trying to improve on that challenge. But we still have a lot to do in order to ensure that agri contributes its quota to our poverty eradication strategy in the country.
Did you experiment with that in Ekiti?
Yes, I did.
How much of gains did you get?
Significant. Because in terms of investment, we were able to get around $300 million into Ekiti. Today in Ekiti, we're producing about 80,000 liters of milk every month from a moribund, a hitherto moribund dairy farm that we brought back to life in partnership with Promasido. So every time you are drinking cowbell milk, Seun, you are probably drinking milk from Ekiti State that you're not aware of. And this has to be the model. You have to have a public-private partnership in order to make this work, because government really doesn't have that capacity to do this.
All right. There is the dairy state in America is called Wisconsin.
Right.
And almost every state that you go to in the United States, it has a tag relating to what it contributes to the port, to the center.
You have it here too.
Well, it's not a start. I mean, that has since collapsed since we left regionalism. Regional government administration in this country. Suddenly
each state still has appellation. Nasarawa, home of solid minerals. Ekiti, fountain of knowledge. Lagos Central.
A lot of people will say those were just appellations without real results. The question is that how much of, are the states really bringing to the table rather than going capping around to the center every month? The question is,
we always talk about this capping.
Yes, we always talk.
And you and I have had conversations about this going capping and federation resources is not federal government money.
But I disagreed with you the last time.
But you are wrong.
But on the point that
federation revenue belongs to the federation.
Accountant General,
and the federation.
Your Excellency, the Accountant Generals every month from the state they go to the center to share this money, which belongs to the center.
They could share the money without even coming. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you, over the last 1 year, the meetings have been virtual. They don't have to come to Abuja to do it.
But there's still consultation with the center.
The principle is that the center has a portion of the money, which is defined. The state has a portion of the money, and the local government has a portion of the money. It is not a master-servant relation. They are coordinate jurisdictions. They're not subordinate jurisdictions.
But it doesn't look like that. Is in theory, but it doesn't really look like that. And some of us are challenging the status quo, that the states must produce more. We've had situations where Ondo State was very known for cocoa in some years.
And the government of Ondo is now reviving cocoa.
Yeah.
They're now producing chocolate.
I'm happy that this is happening.
Exactly.
But there's more to be done. A big question here.
I'll be the first to agree with you that there's more to be done. That's why I'm running.
That's a big question. and I'm happy that you said Ekiti State, for example, is producing dairy. Promasido is in conversation with Ekiti State. And
no conversation, he's actually on ground.
It's an effort there. And I remember that Kwara State had all of this too, some years ago. But we're due for a break now. And I'd like to ask you this critical question. should he become Nigeria's president, what is one thing that you want the world to know Nigeria for?
Nigeria has always been known as that country with a manifest destiny to be the pride of the black race. And the only way to restore Nigeria back to that pride of place is to be self-sufficient in all of what we do. Agriculture is a major vehicle for that self-sufficiency. We cannot gain the pride of the world if we don't resolve our domestic challenges. And the crux of that domestic challenge is our national cohesion. Once we're able to tackle that, Nigeria is an engine of growth.
All right.
And it's going to blossom. I am confident about that.
There are a few more stuff that I like. I mean, I just enjoy having conversations with you on issues of governance. Either I disagree with you or I agree with you.
You may disagree without being disagreeable. Nothing
absolutely.
wrong with that.
So with us, Governor Fayemi, because we'll take a break. And when we come back, our conversation continues with you. But later on the program, the PDP is having some issues in the ranks, and we'll find out from the spokesperson what exactly is going on. They're disagreeing on the issue of zoning. It's tearing the members apart. Debo Ologunagba will join us later after we conclude our conversation with Governor Fayemi on his presidential position. So with us, everyone. We'll be right back. A conversation, everyone, with Governor Fayemi of Ekiti State, and the presidential aspirant on the platform of the APC continues now. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Your Excellency. Let me shift, because we've been talking about the economy, and we can go on and on, because what the average Nigerian out there is looking at is not the figures. They're looking at how food can be brought to their table, how they can guarantee food on their table and in their bellies. That's what they're concerned about. Another issue that an average Nigerian will be looking at is security. It's public knowledge that you had your study at your doctoral level in war studies.
Yes.
The question is, do you subscribe to us getting help, foreign help, international help? Because it does look like some of our problems are evading solutions. And perhaps those who are suggesting mercenaries might be thinking right. Do you think so?
Sure, it's very interesting you're asking me this question. I wrote a book in the year 2000, 22 years ago now, titled Mercenaries, an African Security Dilemma. Mm-hmm. So this is an issue that I've had cause to ruminate over considerably. And the first thing to deal with is that actually in the context of the African Union peace and security architecture, mercenaries are illegal.
Well, we've used it one time in this country.
Well, we have used it. I'm just telling you what the protocol is. What the protocol is. Many countries have used it. You've had Sandline, you've had all manner of private security companies. That's the euphemism for mercenaries in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in a number of other countries. And actually, President Jonathan, towards the tail end of his administration, brought in some private security companies. And there's no doubt that they can be effective. The question has always been about accountability of that security machinery. At least the Nigerian military, we know that there is democratic control and oversight. It's a different matter whether it is effectively implemented or not, but it's there. We know under a civilian government, a democratic government, you can monitor and hold them accountable for whatever they may have done wrong, human rights violations, abuse, you name it. But I am of two minds about this. Frankly, if we address the question of our force posture, equipment, intelligence, and bring technology to bear, I do not believe that we necessarily require mercenaries to tackle the current problems we have. I spoke this morning at my declaration about this same Nigeria we're talking in 1967-68 moved from being a 10,000 strong military. We only had 10,000 men at the time we were going into the Civil War. But in the space of 1.5 years, by the time that war ended, the military had grown to 250,000 men. If we could do that within that short space of time, there is no reason why we cannot increase the number of our men in the military now. And if recruitment is a problem, there is no reason why we cannot bring back our men who are on reserve. And every military officer who has been demobilized or who has retired is effectively a reservist.
All right. Now,
so these are things that I think we need to do, and then we need to change the force of posture. I was talking about fighting in the savannah, where we have banditry, where we have insurgency. It's mostly savannah plain lands. Yes, there are communities that are farther apart, so you have a lot of ungoverned spaces in between them.
So if mercenaries, you have cancelled mercenaries, what about the official model of going towards the, to countries, to consult countries who can come officially to join our, bring their army to help us? Because some of your colleagues, governors, have been sharing their frustration. In fact, recently, Governor of Kaduna said was one of those things, bring mercenaries and fight. This came out
and I can understand this pain.
Yeah.
I can understand why Governor Nasir El-Rufai came to that point. All I'm saying is we need to do more with our own military. And unless there are people in our military and in the country who are benefiting from this conflict, these problems are solvable.
So, if some of these problems are ideological, so some people believe, would you, as a president, should you be elected, go and meet and find out the people behind some of these issues?
Seun, there are two dimensions to this. Even if ultimately all wars end on negotiation table, you need to bring the forces by compulsion, one way or the other, to the negotiating table.
Because I've had a guest who said, look, you need to talk to these bandits.
There's nothing.
That they have their agitation and their reasons are fundamental. Do you think it's sensible to do that?
I am not fundamentally opposed to talking.
Or negotiation.
But negotiation must have a clearly defined purpose.
How long can it take you to stem the tide of insecurity in Nigeria should you become president? For example, from May 29, 2023.
Seun, I don't think it's wise for anyone to put a date to these issues, because terrorism, even when you clear the bulk of it, you're still going to have remnants. It's something that once it comes into a society, it can take time.
Or you can solve the problem.
Or the problem is clearly solved.
You understand this problem.
I understand you need to have a clear analysis of what the problem is, and then organize the military particularly in a way that it can focus its attention on this. And I've talked about use of satellite, use of technology, changing your order of battle to respond to what these bandits are also doing, because they understand. And that's why they come in droves on motorcycles. So you cannot fight them. It's an asymmetrical war.
So Nigerians should trust you with that, in that area. You have capacity.
I would like to think that I have a network and I have an understanding of what the issues are, but I also know that it's not just a military response that we need, because there are drivers of this insurgency. Right. We need to address the drivers in inequality, youth unemployment, lack of education, in all of those communities. In short, we need a Marshall Plan.
All right. This will take a lot of time. But we have just about 60 seconds to close the program. And there is a fundamental problem here in Nigeria, and that's the issue of power, electricity.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this just in 1 minute? How can we solve the problem of power? What would you do differently from what this present government is doing, but the power situation has not been resolved?
I think it's unfortunate that we have had this situation with our power supply, and it's not a problem traceable to the government in office alone. This is a problem that has been there. President Obasanjo tried to tackle this problem. I served as governor in the on the board of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company that built all those generating plants, the NIPP plants. So I knew how much effort went into that. But I think the problem we had was the way and manner the privatization was conducted. That's one. The second is that we now need to deal with a fundamental challenge, which is this notion of a single national grid is not effective. We need to either regionalize the grid or promote micro and mini grids that can focus on particular communities and society, whether they're renewable energy or mainstream thermal power or gas-fired power. We must get away from a national grid approach.
Governor Fayemi, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I know in the coming days we'll talk more as the day progresses. Thank you so much.
It would be my pleasure, and that's why my declaration was organized in a town hall format so that people can ask questions of what I intend to do in office.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Shem.
Let's take a break, everyone, and when we come back, Debo Ologunagba, the spokesperson of the PDP, will be joining me next. There are issues that he will be clarifying for us. Stay with us.